Hey folks, GameDog here, and welcome to a video that might be the first in a series if people end up enjoying this. Basically, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take every monster from RPGs I happen to be a fan of, typically creature capture games where said monsters can be friends as well as enemies, and grade them on a 1 to 5 scale. Said scale is based off of general stuff such as how much I like the design, does it have any interesting trivia behind it, if I've used it, how fun is it of a party member. There's nothing objective about this video, really. All of these are my opinions, of course, but I don't know, man, I think it could be a lot of fun. Now, as for the game I'd pick, well, I had quite a lot to choose from, but what I eventually ended up going with is the original Yokai Watch, the first game in a series my sister got me into. Basically, the gist of it is you play as this kid who finds a watch that lets him see yokai, which are like monsters and creatures from Japanese folklore, although they're redesigned to fit the cutesy anime art style of the game, and they can be recruited as your party members. It's a pretty cool concept. And then from there, it's got the plot of basically a slice-of-life kids anime. Frankly, at least from my experience, these really aren't the kinds of games you play for the plot as much as the writing, characters, and gameplay. There's 4 mainline games in total, as well as a ton of spin-offs and multimedia endeavors, all ranging wildly in terms of availability and price, and honestly, it can make the series a little hard to get into, but I promise it's a ton of fun if you think you're the type who can get into that sort of thing. For this video, instead of covering the over 700 yokai expanding across the entire series, I'm only going to be covering the monsters from the very first game, which is a much more humble yet still respectable 245. If this video does well and you guys like this, who knows, maybe I can do the future games as well. So yeah, there we go. Let's get started. The first one we have is Pandal. Oh, and I'm going to be doing these in medallium order, by the way, which is basically... Okay, I know fans of this series hate it when you compare it to Pokemon, because while there may be some similarities between the two series, they really don't play or feel anything alike at the end of the day. But the medallium, it's the Pokédex. That's really the simplest way to put it. Okay, now let's actually start. So, Pandal. I like Pandal, and I think he's a really good starting point for this list, actually, because he's a very ordinary-looking yokai. I see this sometimes in creature capture games, but sometimes you'll see them throw in a couple of these little warrior enemies that feel almost like they'd be generic foot soldier minions in other RPGs. We're talking like your Pawniards or your Tykes. These types of creatures don't fight for your attention. They're also never anyone's favorite monster, but everyone likes them. And that's okay. It's a perfectly neutral design. I'll appropriately give it a 3. I think this is a really good starting point. Pandal also has an evolution named Undi, and that has a recolor named Tonbo. You're going to see this a lot in this game, by the way. Like, a lot of monsters have an evolution, and then there's like a recolor of that evolution you tend to get in other ways. In cases like this where there are recolors of a single enemy, I'm going to be grading them together, even if it does have me go out of order occasionally. It just makes sense to me to do it this way, in my opinion. Now, as for these two, I kind of have a similar opinion on both of them as well. They're very generic-looking foot soldier monsters that don't fight for your attention at all. I'll give them both a 3 as well. Though, of the two, I think I prefer Tonbo's design a little more because the darker body color contrasts a little better with the white bandana and cloth. Katana. This one's funny. The name is a wordplay on katana, and it's supposed to be a dull sword. The colors are really unique on this one. It doesn't really pop per se, but the green and purple is typically not a color scheme you associate with swords. Oh, and I hope you like purple, because there's a lot of purple monsters in this game. I'll give this one a 3, but I'll give a 4 to its evolution, the Katanana. The blade splits into 4, and it looks almost like squid tentacles in a way. It's a creative design. I like it a lot. It also has a recolor called Slack-a-Slash that I don't enjoy nearly as much, though. It mostly just looks more like a traditional sword, which is fine, but the super white face combined with a drill makes him look almost sick, and I'm not particularly a fan of it. I'll give it a 3 anyway. Mushimo and Minochi. I think that's how you say those. I might mispronounce some of these incorrectly. Okay, this is a design I didn't quite get until I looked up what it was actually based on. It's a burnt kakumochi, which is apparently a type of food in Japan you need to cook before eating. However, if you burn it, it kind of crackles up in bursts. In this instance, the burst becomes an angry face. And that's kind of cool. There's a number of yokai in this game based off of very Japanese things I'm bound to not quite understand as an American, though I promise I won't try to give something a low score just because I don't get it, so to say. I'll try to do my due diligence and understand what all these are based on at the very least. Past what it's based on, it's a cool design, I guess. It just kind of gives the feel of a generic strongman type of guy, but the COA beam trousers is kind of clever. I'll give the base one a 3, though the recolor I'll only give a 2. The particular shade of red they chose makes them look almost sunburnt, and I'm not really a fan of it. Helmsman. Now, I'm going to go a little out of order here and talk about armsmen alongside this one, because there's actually a pretty cool gimmick with these two. One is a headless knight, and the other is a knight without a head. I'll give them both a 3. The designs are a little generic, but it's pretty funny that there are two monsters like this that look like they practically belong together. And that's because they do. There's a mechanic in the game where you can combine yokai with items or even each other to create all new party members. And if you combine these two, you get Reunite, who also has a recolor called Corptin. I love this. It's a really clever use of this mechanic that, from my memory, the game doesn't entirely spell out for you, which makes it feel kind of clever when you figure it out on your own. It's even a pretty good party member, and furthermore, I like its design quite a bit as well. I've always been a fan of samurai as an aesthetic, and this one looks powerful, yet appropriately cartoony. The recolor I'm not as big of a fan of, though. I'm just not quite sure what they were going with this color scheme, so I'll give them a 4 and a 3 appropriately. Blazion, Quaken, and Zero. It's a trio of fire lions. Kind of a generic thing to base a monster off of, but I actually like these designs quite a bit. The colors are cool, the pose is cool. I particularly like how the mane becomes fire the higher up you get. I like them a lot. They get a 4 and 2 3s. Of the 3, I prefer the original colors best. Honestly, a black recolor and a white recolor just feels a little lazy to me. The black and white shirts don't contrast nearly as well with their body colors either, as much as they do with the first one. They're all still great, though. Shansen, Sheen, Snee, and Gleam. These are cool looking. They kind of remind me of the Yojimbo design from Final Fantasy XV. Now, these four aren't particularly recolors of each other. In fact, we actually have a case of a split evolution here, depending on which item you fuse Chanson with. But I'm grading them all here together because I like them all for very similar reasons. The colors, the hats, the covered faces, the blades and shoulder pads, it makes them all look similar, yet distinctly unique despite being based off the exact same thing. They have really strong silhouettes that makes them stand out in battle. It's a really good design to a point at which I honestly don't know which one I prefer the most, so I'll give them all a 4. Benkei and B3NK1. Oh hey, it's one of my favorite Yu-Gi-Oh monsters. This one is awesome. Y'all know I love magic users in games, but that doesn't mean I can't get behind a unit that just exudes raw physical power. And this one is definitely one of those. Just being a strong armored warrior that does nothing more than attack really hard. I love the pose, I love its like bladed spear thing, I love how its fluttering white sleeves make it look almost like a ghost, even more so by the fact that it doesn't have a lower torso. It also looks like oddly robotic somehow. It's a weird mishmash of like design motifs, but I overall just really like it. This is actually the first 5 I'm going to give out in this video. I love everything about Benkei. The recolor gets a 4 though, since again, I'm not quite sure what they were going with these particular colors. Maybe the yellow's meant to make them look older by looking like old frayed cloth? I don't know. Tsushiyama and Kapunki. I'm not really feeling these two, to be honest. They're not bad, they get the job done and faithfully represent what they're based on, but I just think they're a little too human looking for their own good. Maybe pushing a little more into cartoony territory than would make them stand out a little more. They both get 2s, I'm not even sure which one I like more, to be honest. Beedler. It's fine. Again, I don't have much to say about this one, though my feelings are a bit more neutral than they are with the last 2, so I'll give this one a 3. Beetle and Cruncha. Now these two I actually do like a lot. Beetle characters are kind of weird to me every time I see them in cartoons and the like, because like, they are undeniably one of the most badass animals in real life, but whenever I see one turn into a video game monster, it just doesn't really do it for me, you know? Like, I never really find it that special. Does anyone else feel that way? These two kind of break that mold, though. They're powerful looking, they have confidence, I love the color schemes on both of them, even if the second one doesn't use contrasting colors nearly as much. I love how their little neck fluff things kind of expands into looking a bit like a scarf. It's a design that's both sharp yet soft in a very aesthetically pleasing way. I'm gonna give them both a 5. Zerberker and Snartle. One of these randomly attacks you without warning if you cross the street without looking both ways too many times. Yes, really, it's a very not fun, needless mechanic, which is something this series unfortunately has a lot of. I'm not really a fan of this character, and how much I dislike his mechanic might be a factor in how much I dislike him here, because I don't like them, and frankly, I don't really care. I'm giving them 2s, though I guess of the two, I prefer the blue mask one because the colors are cooler. It's not so long! Oh no, I forgot about this one. It's just a sick bird not having a good time, and it has a recolor called Dachu. This one is just really funny. I'll give them both 4s, but the second one I prefer a little more just because I like how it looks a bit more like a realistic bird. Giving a fictional cartoon animal points for realism feels weird, but birds in particular are just kind of the exception to that for me for some reason, because, I don't know, birds tend to be all sorts of weird colors in real life, and they always look pretty cool. Wazat and Dumbcap. What are they? Like sentient hats with mouths? Well, turns out, kinda yeah. They're based off a class of yokai called the... oh god, I'm gonna butcher this. The Tsukumogami, which are tools and other inanimate objects turned into monsters, which might make you think I love them given how much I tend to enjoy monsters that are inanimate objects brought to life. But something here just doesn't do it for me. I'm not sure if it's the teeth or how wrinkly they look, but I just don't like them. I'll give the original a 2, but the recolor I think is even worse. I'm gonna give it a 1 because... okay, some of you are never going to be able to unsee this, but the more flesh-like color makes it look almost like a sex toy. Like, I don't know. How did they think this color scheme was a good idea? I really don't like either of these designs. Dewana. He doesn't wanna. It's a cute design. It's got a pretty hilarious origin story, too. I'll give it a 4. Namor and Kawit. Similar feeling, though I don't think they're nearly as cute looking or as interesting looking. The ultimate attack of Kawit is apparently a Dragon Ball Z reference. This series, especially later in, is not shy at all when it comes to referencing pop culture all the time, though it's kind of surreal to see one this early in the series. I'll give them both a 3. Laughalada and Blips. Right off the bat, I think these two look a little too similar. Like, their body color barely changes, almost to a point in which it just looks like the same enemy with a different lighting, and their clothes are too small compared to their head to really highlight that they're different at all. That alone loses them points, but in addition, I'm not really a fan of the design in the first place. What it's based off of is pretty creepy, but other than that, there's really nothing I like about these two. They'll get 1s. Tattletale and Scranny. It's an old lady. I really don't know what else to say. It's fine for what it is, though something particularly bothers me about both of their body shapes. It might be the weird lanky long arms, it might be the light blue mouth of the original that it has for some reason, it might be the buck tooth. I don't know, I'll give the original a 1, I'm just not really a fan of it. The recolor I'll give a 3 though, if only because I think what it's based on is kind of genuinely badass. Tattlecast. Now, this one you really need to take in for a minute before you fully understand it. It's an evolution of Tattletale that's wielding a boombox for some reason. It even kind of fixes some problems I have with the original design. The long arms, they're for carrying the boomboxes now. The weird mouth, well, it's covered up now, so it's not something that really sticks out anymore. When I originally played this game, I actually used this one in my final team, and it's surprisingly fun. I'll give it a 4. It's a very unique design overall. Q Pistol. I never quite got this one. It's like a maraca with Jigglypuff hair and a gun? I don't get it. It genuinely feels like they came with the name before the design with this one. I'm gonna give it a 2. I feel neutral towards it, though more in a negative way. Casunuva and Casanono. Alright, this one is more my style. The first one is an evolution to the Q-Pistol, though I think the elements work way better here. The hair is more exaggerated. Instead of it having just a cartoony gun for a hand, it now has arm cannons, which are kind of cool. I'm typically not a fan of yokai that are human-shaped, if that makes sense, but I think it just works in both of these cases. Casanono in particular I like a little bit more, if only because I used him during my original playthrough of the game, so I'll give him a 4 and a 5. Signibble. Meh, I'm not really a fan, to be honest. It's not a bad design, it's just not really special either. I'll give it a 2. I almost have an almost identical opinion on Signaton and Static King, though I gotta say, while the wiki doesn't say what they're based on, I gotta wonder if it's the same thing Electabuzz is based on. They just look a little too similar to me, and, well, it's not like there aren't Pokemon based off of yokai as well. Mirapo and Miracle. You get pretty used to seeing the first one since a bunch of them is the fast travel system of the game. I think they look pretty cool, and I like what they're based on too. I'll give them both 3s. Ilu, Elu, and Alu. They're cool-looking elderly owls. I like the more abstract shape of these 3, as well as their little eyebrow cloud things. I'll give them all 4s, though of the 3, I think my favorite recolor is Alu. He has a very soft, easy on the eyes kind of color scheme. Espy and In4. You do be looking like Chicken Nugget, though. I don't know why this thing reminds me so much of that little guy. These designs are pretty cool. It's based off of this really creepy-sounding mind-reading yokai. Really, my only problem with this design is, well, I think its head is way too big. Now, I get that a lot of these monsters are based off of a very chibi art style, so large heads are kind of a given, but these two really give off some serious I work out at the library vibes in a way, and it just looks kind of weird compared to a lot of other monsters. I actually ended up throwing this official art into paint.net and doing a little bit of editing with it for about 5 seconds to make the body larger, and frankly, I actually think this looks better. The distractingly tiny body doesn't completely break the design, but it does detract a bit. I'll still give them 4s. And of the 2, I think I prefer the original, if only because it reminds me of Chicken Nugget. Tengu and Flengu. Tengus are yokai? I actually didn't know that. To be honest, internationally, they're probably the most popular type of yokai. Like, you see them all over the place in video games, and I like these two a lot. I mentioned earlier that I'm not really a big fan of human-like designs for these monsters, but I think these two are cartoony enough that it just kind of works. I'm going to give them both 4s. Of the 2, I prefer the recolor, if only because the big red hair is kind of cool. Kyubi and Frosttail. Oh hey, it's Ninetales and Alolan Ninetales! I kid, though they are based off the same legend, which is pretty cool. Anyway, these two kind of rule. Though, then again, foxes are kinda easy to make look cool. I think my favorite thing about these designs is they hit a really good balance between something that looks cartoony, yet at the same time like an ancient creature along the lines of what it's based on. It's kind of a hard balance to land on, and this design pulls it off really well. The only thing I really don't like about it is I think its hands and feet look a little too realistic. Those wiry, skinny fingers creep me out, to be honest, but meh, whatever. I'll give them both 4s, and I think I prefer the original since yellow and purple is a pretty rare color scheme that works surprisingly well together. Doluma. Okay, I never really felt like I fully understood Darumas. They're like stationary dolls that bring good luck and are supposed to look like monks, I think. As an outsider, though, they just kind of look like red balls with Rorschach tests inside of them, but there's definitely a lot of cultural significance to them, I will admit. This yokai based off of one I'm kind of neutral towards, though in a more positive way just because I like how goofy it looks. It's a funny design, I'll give it a 3. Darumacho and Goruma. Meh, they just kind of feel like generic strongmen to me. Not really special at all, but for what it is, it's a good design. I'll give them 3s. No Way, Impasse, and Walden. I'm grading these together because their designs are a little too similar to me. Though, in spite of that, I really like them. It's a goofy, invincible wall that blocks people and makes them refuse to do things. I like the design, I like the funny concept. What it's based off of looks really cool and maybe more popular than you might think. Did you know that Thwomps from Mario are inspired by the same thing? I want to say the Waller from Eternal Eyes is kind of based off the same legend as well. I'm going to give the first one a 4, but its evolutions in recolor a 3, because I think they could have done something a bit more interesting than just make it a bigger wall. I mean, heck, if you Google search the thing this is based on, it looks almost dog-like. Heck, almost like the Infor and the SB, to be honest. I don't know, maybe they could have, like, given it, like, dog-like traits or something. I don't know, man. They're still good designs, just I think they could have done a lot better here. Vigifant and Toughfent. Meh, not really a fan. Although, the combination evolution they gave them in the second game is pretty badass. I actually used that when I first played that game, though we're not quite there yet. I'm gonna give them 2s. Cartoon elephants are hard to make look cool and unique, I've noticed, and neither of these really do it for me. Blowcade and Lead Balloon. A pufferfish with human arms and legs doesn't feel like the kind of design I would be a fan of, but I kinda like it in a weird sort of way. I don't super like them, but they're funny designs for what they are. They get 3s. Mad Mountain and Lava Lord. A sumo wrestler designed to look like Mount Fuji and a volcano. Huh. Sounds like the kind of thing that just wouldn't work, but they kind of make it do. Like, it kind of looks cool. I'm gonna give them a 4 and a 3. It's definitely a low 4 and a high 3, but I don't know. They're decent designs. Rough Raff. I kind of like this one a lot. I'm not sure if you've noticed, but I've been pretty lukewarm on the tough tribe members of this game so far, because most of them are just buff things with arms, but this one, it's a unique and funny design, it's got a good color scheme, what it's based on is kind of funny. I don't know, it's just overall fun. It gets a 4, though I kind of hate that this might actually be my favorite tough yokai in this game. Badude and Bruff. Almost identical feelings here than I had to the last one. It's a good design. They get a 4 and a 3 because while darker recolors typically look pretty cool, they don't quite jive with this one. Rhinoggin. Remember earlier when I said that beetle designs tend to not really do it for me? Well, this is kind of a good example of that. I don't know if it's the face or the body shape, but it just doesn't look that unique or interesting to me. I'll give it a 2. Rhinomornis and Hornaplenty. These are cooler. Like, a lot cooler, in fact. Nothing super spectacular, but at least they managed to make the base design look a lot better. They get a 3 and a 4. I don't know why, but purple really complements this particular body color. Castellius the 3rd, 2nd, 1st, and Max. I had to look up why there were 4 recolors of this thing because it doesn't seem that special, nor would there really be a serious reason for there to be, and their naming conventions makes me think that they might be part of like a pretty deep reference or something. And apparently they're named after a series of Buddhist temples with bronze, silver, and gold themes respectively. And then maybe the last one is just there because everything in this game needs a recolor, I guess. I don't know. They're cool-looking monsters, though. I mean, they're just kind of anthropomorphic buildings, but they fit into that fun category of looking powerful yet goofy. I'm gonna give them all 4s. I'm not even sure which recolor I like the most here. They're all decent. Robo-Nyan. Oh god, we're really doing Robo-Nyan before the original Jibanyan here? Well, I guess he does come before him in the medallion, but it still feels a little weird. Oh, wait, I said I was going to do all recolors together, didn't I? Okay, give me a second here, I guess. Robo-Nyan, Golden-Nyan, Jibanyan, Thorninyan, Badinyan, Shogunyan, Safinyan, Emranyan, Rubinyan, Topanyan, and Dianyan. I think that's all the ones from the first game. Oh boy. So, for those of you out of the loop, Jibanyan is the main mascot of the franchise, and it's kind of a meme just how many recolors, alternate forms, and costumed versions there are of him in this series. To date, counting all 4 mainline games as well as spin-off and mobile games, there are over 200 of them. It's kind of insane. Seriously, I really want to see people who complain that Pokemon Go has too many Pikachu with stupid hats try this series. So, back on topic, I I like Jibanyan. I don't know, I think it's a cute and memorable design and very fitting for a mascot. Though in terms of quote-unquote mascot yokai that appear in the box arts and play huge roles in the story, my personal favorite is Eusapion, though he's not introduced till the third game, so let's not talk about him yet. The original design gets a 4, though it's a very high 4. As for the rest of them, they're mostly getting 4s too. The jewelry colors, though, I've never particularly been a fan of since they're just literally recolors with not the prettiest weird angular rendering on them to make them look more jewel-like, I guess? I don't know. Giving them all 4s and 3s might sound like a bit of a cop-out, but trust me, if we do later games, talking about these things are going to get a bit more interesting. We get some real high highs and some real low lows, and super late entries even push the boundaries of what can even be considered a quote-unquote Jibanyan form at all. If you want to see them all right now, though, I'd recommend this video by Zukaruksh. I don't know how you say that. I think it's the JK at the end that keeps messing me up. I think that's how you say it, though. As odd as this might sound, that video might have very well been the inspiration for this one as well. Drumpf and Swoosh. God, leave it to a series like this to make a mound of dirt look interesting. I like this design. It's simple, yet looks really strong and powerful. It kind of reminds me of the Lumberwood line from Ni no Kuni. They both get 4s. Dazabel. I like it. It's based off the same thing Scranny is based on, so I guess you could not get points for double dipping on a concept, but I don't know. I think it still works, and they look very different from one another as well. Rattel and Skelabella. Similar vibes. They're also based off the same thing, and I don't know, I'll give them 3s as well, though I like the recolor a bit less because I don't think yellow particularly works as well as the red does here. Caden. I think this is like the first thing you recruit in the series, so it's kind of obvious he's meant to be one of those, okay, this is a good party member because we want to make a good first impression, but don't expect to run him until endgame kind of guys. I think he works perfectly for that. Really the only problem I have with him is he's got that Zubat thing where it feels like you find him freaking everywhere. But other than that, he's good. I'll give him a high 3. Kadabole and Cincada are pretty cool as well. It kind of just looks like the same design but with a bit of armor on them, but the blue shirt on the first one really give it a subtle friendliness you appreciate from early game monsters like this. I'll give them a 4 and a 3. Pupsicle. I used this thing during my first playthrough of the game. In fact, it might be the thing that was on my team the longest in that game due to how early you can find it. I'm giving it a 5. I love this design, how it plays is pretty fun. Really my only issue with it is I wish there was a way to evolve it in the main story, because I wasn't able to find a way to evolve it since you need an item for it. Like, I was really proud of the perfect balance of my team of the first game between having a good balance of healers, matching tribes, no two being of the same element. But the one elephant in the room was I had this dinky E-rank yokai up until the final boss. Was not being able to evolve him until post-game a balancing thing or an oversight. I don't know. Chihuahua. I love that name. And Swell Terrier. This is a really good design too, and a really fun unit to use in battle. Although I do have a bit of a problem with Swell Terrier in particular, and that I don't really think its body shape works that well for a fire character. Chihuahua has a very jagged design. It's obvious he's made of ice and snowflakes just by looking at him. This design motif, however, kind of just looks inappropriate for anything outside that element. I really wish they maybe smoothed out his body shape or added flames or something, because as is, while it is still a good design, it feels particularly lazy redesigned because of this. So I'll give him a 5 and a 3. Wakappa. It's a Kappa. I don't know, man. It's got a flat-ass head, but other than that, it seems pretty generic as far as fictional Kappas go. I'll give it a 3. It's not bad, it's just not interesting at all. Uphack and Supyo. You know, it's amazing how much a bland design can be improved just by giving something some good hair and a sword, because that's literally what these two look like, but it works really well. Like, these look way better than Wakappa in my opinion. My only real issue is I don't think that these two themselves look that unique from each other. I guess that evens out as a 4 each. Komasan and Komajiro. These two are brothers as well as sorta mascots for the series. They appear in every game and have story beats surrounding them. They get variants like every other mascot character, and Koma-san is even a mascot of one of the side games, I think. But at the same time, they're like never major characters. And in terms of just the design, I like both of them, probably even more than Jibanyan, to be honest. I think what they're based on is pretty cool too. I like the fires over their eyes, they remind me a little of Aurelius, to be honest. I like their colors, their little markings. I don't know, they're just fun monsters. I'm gonna give them both a 5 and a 4. Komajiro I do like a tiny bit less because his colors are less interesting, and I wish there was a little more to his design than just being, like, literally just a recolor. Komain and Komiger. They're both evolutions of their respective baby mode versions. They're good designs, though I don't like them nearly as much. They both get 4s. Baku. I think this is my sister's favorite yokai. It's either her or Stir Crazy Stew. She seems to like both of these quite a bit. I like it a lot too. It's a very goofy design just because of how wide it is. And it's a good example of a design that manages to cross a very tight line between cute yet kind of ugly. It's a tough balance to reach, and I think it pulls it off really well with the jagged teeth, the stubby legs, the dopey eyes. It's just a fun design. Fun fact, too, Drowsy from Pokemon as well as Baku are based off the same thing. A really good example of how two designs can be completely different despite having identical origins. Baku also has a recolor named Wapier, who I'm not as much of a fan of. I think a darker color like purple works better for a design like this, so I'll give him a 4 and a 3. Shmoopy. I hate saying its name. It's a little hard to tell what it even is going off just the official art, but it's supposed to be a small puppy holding a heart. It's a cute design. Maybe a little too cute for its own good, though that might be what they were going for. I'll give it like a high 3, I guess. It also has an evolution called Pinky Poo, which I have similar feelings towards. It's cute, but maybe a little overly cute due to the colors. I'll give it a 4 as well. And then there's Pookevil. We gotta talk about Pookevil. Pookevil is my favorite yokai. Like, in the entire series. It was on my final team in the first game, I made a conscious effort to get it in the second, and even in the third game I found myself using it a bit, and even after I took him out of my party, I still had it be the yokai that followed me around everywhere. I've drawn him, I've drawn my own characters with him, I love everything about this thing. I love the design, I love the colors, I think they work better than they do on the original even. It's fun to use in battle, basically being a cleric of a Dre move instead of a traditional heal. I love how, like, its medallium entry implies that it, like, manipulates people to do evil things. I'm not sure if you can tell based off, like, the characters I tend to like and stuff, or the original characters I draw a lot on my own Twitter, but I'm a really big fan of the aesthetic of characters that look cute and innocent, but are secretly kind of badass or have evil, mystical, or destructive powers. Pookevil, as a result, is practically made for me. I love the scheming jerk. I have plenty of favorite monsters in this series. Nefarious and Pushpup are some of my favorite monsters in the series. Grupuscon and Tyrat are some of my favorite monsters in the series. Robo-Dragon, Wright Brothers, and Disliking are some of my favorite monsters in the series, but none other embody the perfect combination of elements for me that Pookevil does. I'll give it a 5. Yes, this is my favorite yokai in the series. Frostina. It's cute. It's basically an ice girl somewhat dressed like a white mage. The particular legend this thing is based on, the Yuki Oni, is really popular in pop culture as well, so you've probably seen monsters based off of this thing before. I don't really have much to say about it other than that, well, I like it. I'll give it a 4. Lazaria and Demona. Remember earlier when I criticized Swelterior for feeling like a lazy redesign because its body shape didn't feel appropriate for a fire monster? Well, I think this is a much better execution of that idea. She looks almost like a monster based around dust and decay. The black colors work really well here, to a point at which I'm not even sure which one I prefer. Other than that, I have identical feelings towards them that I do Frostina, so they both get 4s as well. Wiglin, Steppa, and Riv. It is fluttering seaweed moving in such a way that it looks like it's dancing. That is a really funny thing to base a monster off of. Too bad they kind of suck, though. I remember I tried to use one of these in my first playthrough of the first game, and it was a downright painful experience. And this has come from the guy who ran Popsicle until post-game. I don't know. I guess that makes my feelings on all three even out to like a 3, I guess. Wonston and Grubsnitch. I do not like them. The story they're based on is kind of interesting, but I just think they're a little too ugly for their own good. They both get 1s, though of the two, I feel I prefer Grubsnitch because the oranger skin makes it look a little like a goblin, which I think works a little better here, but they're both pretty bad. Hungramps, Grainpaw, and Elderbloom. It is a gluttonous old man, and despite him being sort of a classic monster that appears in every game, I never really liked him. I don't know. I didn't even know he was supposed to be shaped like a grain of rice until I saw his recolor. Like, it's just not a design I think works very well. Elderbloom, on the other hand, I am a pretty big fan of. I don't know, he just looks like a really friendly and nice guy and someone you would want to be friends with. The eyebrows and facial hair being cherry blossom petals is a cool design as well. I'll give them 2s and a 5. Hungorge. Ugh, this one's just ugly. I really hope I don't have to explain why. Give it a 1 and get out of here. Lodo and Chippa. I genuinely think these are two of the ugliest enemies in the entire series, and if anything, at least the ugliest enemies in the first game. I don't know if it's the lips, the almost poop-shaped hair, the realistic hands and feet, how naked he looks. It's apparently based off of a yokai that brings poverty, which explains why his cape is tattered and he doesn't have clothes, because he can't afford any. But I'm gonna be honest, to me at least, they borderline look like racist World War II era caricatures of Japanese people. It's just a design that doesn't work in any way, shape, or form. They both get 1s. Enterfly and Enyfly. These two feel really lazy. At least the recolors feel lazy. The designs themselves are pretty cool. I mean, it's not often you get to see a butterfly design that's plump, and it makes them kind of unique, but God, I always confuse these two, and for good reason. They'll get 2s. Betterfly and Papillion. Okay, I love the name of the first one, though I have identical feelings on them otherwise. They're unique-looking butterflies, though they look so similar that I always confuse the two, and it just detracts from them as a result. I'll give them a 3 and a 2. That name the first one has, Betterfly, that really saves it for me. Happy Air. It is a happy cloud with a French accent. It's fine, I guess. I feel average towards it. I'll give it a 3. Reversa and Reversette. I want to like these two more than I do. It's a unique body shape looking almost like anthropomorphic magic lamps, and I've praised designs before for using purple and yellow in interesting ways in their color schemes. But at the end of the day, they just aren't very interesting, to be perfectly honest. I'll give them 3s. Old Saint Trick and Old Fortune. This is a cute design. They're based off of Santa Claus and Father Christmas, who are not yokai, nor do they even originate from anything Japanese, I believe, but I don't know, who cares? They're fun designs. Like, I actually like both of these quite a bit. I'll give them both 4s. Rollin' in Doubles. These two exude raw terror, as they are based off of this horrifying yokai that's a disembodied giant head that startles people wandering around the woods, and at best it pranks people, and at worst it crushes them under its body weight and then eats them. Jesus! And on top of that, they represent the horrors of gambling as well. I like both of them. They're just scary giant heads, and I wouldn't have it any other way. I'll give them 4s. Papa Bolt and Uncle Infinite. They're genies. I don't know, man, genies are always fun. I think I prefer the second one personally. The black cloud combined with the yellow bands and knots really make him stand out and look powerful while doing so. I'm gonna give him a 4 and a 5. Mama Aura and Auntie Heart. I'm a bit more neutral towards these two. I think I just don't find their silhouettes as strong, if that makes sense. Though, like with the last two, I prefer the recolor better because I find the colors more interesting and it makes for something that stands out more in battle. I'll give them a 3 and a 4. Lead Oni and Minimo. Occasionally these games will throw a little minigame at you in the overworld where you see one of these and then you have to follow it around and it'll drop a chest after a little while. And they're kind of annoying, but in a fun, morbidly curious kind of way that makes sense for like what these things are based on. I don't think their designs are anything to write home about, but they get the job done pretty well for what they are, and I'll give them both 3s. Aki. It's a boring design. There's really nothing interesting about it. Like, it really is just a body with a head, and, like, the colors are interesting, the shape isn't interesting. When I was doing research on this thing, I found that the Shin Megami Tensei series has a monster based off of it, too, that looks leagues more interesting, honestly. I really gotta play that series one of these days, I swear. I'm gonna give Aki a 1. I'm sorry, buddy, but they could have tried a little harder here. Pain and Agon. They're almost as boring, though giving them weights makes them a little more interesting, honestly. I'm still not particularly impressed, though, so I'll give them 2s. Negative Buzz. Mosquitoes suck in real life, though they're kind of the anti-beetles in a way because, while I like beetles in real life but tend to hate fictional representations of them, I hate mosquitoes in real life, but whenever I see them turned into characters, I tend to think they're actually pretty cool looking. This is just a really good design in general. It has a unique silhouette, I like how it looks ghost-like, and from what I remember, you can find it incredibly early, and it's not a bad starting monster. This one gets a 5, I really like him. Mosquevil and Scritchy. It feels like they took Negative Buzz as a base here. Well, yeah, because one of them is literally just an evolution of him, and just added more stuff to the design, and frankly, I don't really think they needed to. If anything, the additions kind of detract from the design, in my opinion. The wings look a little too big and detailed, the weird leaf eyebrows look a little off. It's still a fantastic design, but they really took a design that didn't need fixing here and just broke it a bit. Although, yellow and teal is a cool color motif. I actually do like the recolor quite a bit. I'll give them a 4 and a 5. Dimmy. Well, it wouldn't be a JRPG without some ninjas, now would it? And honestly, I really like this design. It incorporates a few design motifs you often see with ninjas in really elegant ways that just add to it overall. Such as, you know how ninjas are always associated with shadows? Well, its bottom half gets more shadowy the farther down you go. I like its little sword, its little dot eyes. It's a relatively simple design that does everything it needs to and then some. I'll give it a high 4. Blandin and Null. Now, while Mosquito was an example of them taking a perfectly fine design and detracting from it with its additions, I think this is kind of the exact opposite. I love the look of these two, and basically all they did was just add more ninja stuff to them. It has a shuriken, it's wearing more black and a scarf. I particularly like how its head becomes a scroll the farther up you go now. It's an elegant design that, again, does everything it needs to and then some. I'll give them both 5s. I'm not even sure what recolor I like more here, they're just both really good. Hide-a-Bat. It's cute, it's just a little bat, and I love its hashtag print wings too. This is an easy high 4 for me, I just really like it. Abode-a-Bat and Belfry. This is a hilarious design, and something I feel like most of us can relate to these long past couple of years. It's a bat residing in a house, and I really like it. They both get 5s. Like, I really can't put into words how funny I find these two and how much I like them. Just trust me on this. Suspicione, Tantrone, and Contrarione. I'm very neutral on all 3 of them. I like the concept behind them, what they're based on is pretty cool, but I'm gonna be honest, it feels like one of those enemies that was mostly added just to fill a quota, if you know what I mean. For what they are, though, they're fine, I guess. I'll give them all 3s, and I think I like the final one the most because, again, yellow and teal is a cool color scheme. Tengloom and Nerd. I really like these two. They're based off of Tengus as well, specifically lesser-ranked Tengus, which explain why they kinda suck, unfortunately. But even more so than that, they look like gargoyles to me, and I don't know, gargoyles are a really cool aesthetic. I'll give them both 4s, though of the two, I think I prefer the original since the darker colors work better together to make them look more stone-like, like a gargoyle. Negasus and Nefarious. I have been looking forward to talking about these two, because I just love how absolutely cursed they both look. They have these really stout and chubby proportions that make them look like something from, like, My Little Pony or something, but then they have these enormous, like, old man heads with a full row of teeth, and anytime they emote or do anything, really, they just look so weird, and they also sound like gothic lords for some reason, and I absolutely love it. I've always had a soft spot for really weird horse monsters in these games, and these two certainly fit the bill. They're both obvious 5s for me, though of the two, I do prefer Nefarious because I think the name is more clever, and also black horses are a cool aesthetic, and I also used one on my final team when I played the second game. Timidevil. It's a funny concept, I guess. I'm very neutral on it, though. I'll give it a 3. Beelzebub and Count Cavity. These two are a bit more interesting. In fact, I think they're historically fan favorites for the series. I'm personally a little neutral on them too, but I don't know, man, who doesn't love a good demon design? Really, my only criticism is red and black feel like a tad generic of a design concept for recolors, but I do still like them. I'll give them 4s. Greenzel and Awe Evil. These guys just look evil, and I kind of like it. I think they both look really cool, though the first one feels objectively better because, like, the black eyes and yellow pupils I really don't think look as good as they think it does. I'll give them a 4 and a 3. Cough Cough and Hurchin. I like these two, more than I probably should, to be honest. I don't know why, but I have a soft spot for monsters that are like living shapes, objects, or abstract creatures. It's a little hard to describe, but bottom line, I think these look kind of cool, even if it's absolutely garbage in combat. I'm going to give them both 4s. Heck Pocket and Rockabilly. It's a bird. I don't know. It's got that similar charming wideness that Baku has, but I really don't think it looks as interesting here. The second one, I'm having a real hard time finding what it's based off of. Which is weird because a bird with a face painted on its stomach feels like such an oddly specific thing that it must be based off of something, right? Well, the wiki is torn between it either being based on a yokai that has an actual living face on its stomach, which doesn't really check out, it doesn't really look like it, or it's based off a party trick people often do while drunk. I'm not kidding. It's apparently a very Japanese thing, to the point at which I can't even find much information on it online. I don't know, man. They're both fine, I guess. I'll give them 3. Boohoo, Flumpy, and Screek. Dang, another group of birds not having a good time. And you know what? I like these ones too. They have very poor silhouettes in my opinion, but once you know what they're supposed to be, I can't help but find them to be very fun designs. I think Flumpy has my favorite colors of the 3, so I'll give them a 3, a 4, and a 3. Manjamut. Manjamut is difficult to talk about. He's one of those characters that appears a lot in the series, so it's obvious the developers like him, but when it comes to fan reactions, a lot of people just feel rubbed the wrong way whenever they look at him, and I am here to say that I kind of like that. I personally think this design is a lot more clever than people give it credit for. Hear me out here. There are a ton of yokai, or basically folklore monsters in general, that are just a random animal, but with a human face. Hell, Manjamut himself is even based off of one. But there's so many, in fact, that it just feels a little comical, really. Most of these examples, if they're represented in this series, are cute. Manjamut, on the other hand, is anything but. He's very deliberately an awkward, uncomfortable design, and it's such an outlier that it almost feels like it's intentional. You know, like they're taking the piss out of this entire concept of a creature of a human face. And I kind of like that because of this. I essentially like this design ironically, if that makes sense. And yeah, as a result, I'm going to give it a 4. If you guys hate this design, you're frankly weak, because I think it's simply hilarious. Multimut in Cerberus. It's an evolution of Manjamut based off of the Cerberus, or I've seen some people pronounce it Kerberos over the years. That's a little random, and frankly, I don't think it's nearly as interesting of a design either. I'm not even really sure what they're trying to do here. Like, is this thing meant to be as unsettling looking as its pre-evolution? I don't know. It's a good design, but it just confuses me a little and doesn't really stick to its own theme, so I'll give it a 3. Droplet, Slush, and Gush. They're pretty boring designs. I really have nothing else to say about them. I'll give them 2s. Drizzle and All Hail. These two, on the other hand, are kind of awesome. I really like their shape. They're definitely unique-looking rain elementals, and yeah, I just think they're really cool-looking in general. I'll give them both 4s. Chatterley and Nagatha. Absolutely terrifying. I think these are some of the scariest designs in the entire series, and I really like them because of it. I remember the first time I ever saw one of these things. I was playing the first game really late at night, and I was pretty drowsy. I revealed one of these using that little watch light thing, and then when it did its attack animation, which is just like chomping straight at you, I got this visceral chill down my spine that not even actual horror games tend to give me. This series scared me. How often can you say that? These two are brilliant. Even what they're based on is really cool. I'll give them both 5s. Like, these two are just amazing to me. Dismeralda. I think it's visually boring. It just kind of looks like muck, but with hair and, like, more girl-looking. Although, I do like muck quite a bit, but I don't know. I'll give it a low 3. It just doesn't really seem that interesting. Cheek Squeak and Cuttin' Cheese. Do I really have to explain why I'm not the biggest fan of the fart monster? No, I really don't like these two. They get 1s. Compunzer and Lemedian. This is one of those designs I really need to look up what it was based on before I understood it. It's based off of a Rakugo comedian, which is something I'm actually familiar with, if only because there was an Ace Attorney trial where one was a witness. I actually think I enjoyed that case way more than the average person, to a point at which I got curious enough to even look up what this was on YouTube, and I watched a few performances on there as a result of it. The simplest I could describe them is it's basically stand-up comedy, but your only prop is a paper fan, and you sit down instead, which inherently has some comedic irony to it. I don't know, man. The people who do it look like they're having a lot of fun. Anyway, I like these two. They're not necessarily special, but they pull off what they're based on pretty well and have pretty interesting color schemes and silhouettes to boot. I'll give them a 4 and a 3. I like Composer's colors more. It's as simple as that. Grumples is the oldest lady of all time. Old evil witches are a fun aesthetic, and this one actually has a pretty cool origin as well. I'll give it a high 3. Everfor and Eternal. I really like these two. They have an extremely interesting origin story. They're not so much based off of yokai, but instead off of high-ranking courtesans, which are sort of like prostitutes, but like most of their clientele are the super wealthy and even royalty, which, I'll be honest, isn't necessarily a very G-rated thing to base a monster off of for a series like this, but I don't know, man. I think they look really cool. My only problem is I don't really think they look that different compared to each other. I'll give them both 4s, though. Like, they just look like really powerful, like, witches. Insomni and Sandy. They're fine. One of them takes you to the yokai world, so they have a bit of story and lore significance in that, but I never really felt like their designs were that special. I'll give them a 3 and a 4. Noko. I like Noko a lot. This is basically the metal slime of this series. It drops a lot of money and experience, which is kind of brilliant given it's based off of a creature kind of known for its scarcity. It's called the Tsuchinoko, I think, and you actually see it quite a lot in pop culture. You know, I actually ended up using this thing when I played the first game, because if there's one thing creature capture games have taught me, is that if an enemy actively runs away from you, or is really hard to find, it's probably good, and my god, this thing ended up being really good, on top of being a really cute design as well. I'll give it a 5. It also has a recolor I completely forgot about called Panda Noko, which I do like too, though a lot less because I don't really see the significance of one of these things being based off a panda, and the wiki doesn't really explain that it is based off of something. I don't know, man, I'll give this one a 3. Luminoko. This is Noko's evolution, and I like him a lot for very similar reasons, though just not as much. I'll give him a 4. Heel, Krunger, and Ernaconda. Who doesn't love a good snake in a pot? I like all 3 of them. They actually are based off of a yokai as opposed to just like the trope of a thing in a pot. It's called the Tobio, I think, which are black Chinese snakes that can be tamed and then used to put curses on people. Okay, I'm gonna say I'll give them a 4, a 3, and a 4. The middle one's eyes just look a little weird to me, but the other 2 look really cool. Now, I actually want to go on a bit of a tangent here. Kind of like with Aki, when I was doing research on what this thing was based on, I found out that the Shin Megami Tensei series, once again, also has a monster based off the creature that this thing is based on, and finding this sent me on a little bit of a rabbit hole. You know how with Google Images, when you click on an image, they then show you a bunch of related images below it? Well, it was also filled up with other monsters from this series, and I kid you not, for like 20 minutes, I just went on a morbidly curious stream of clicking on the weirdest one down there, and okay, how have I never played these games before? This series has some wild enemy design, and I'm gonna be honest, that alone has kind of made me more interested in it. You know, before I do though, would you guys ever be interested in me doing a video like this, but for this series instead? But as someone who's never played it before. I don't know, I think having to judge monsters without the context of what they are or where you fight them could make for a really interesting video. Maybe I could even try something similar to that with like Digimon 2 at some point, because I didn't grow up with that series either, but occasionally I do stumble across designs for that series online, and I think they're pretty charming. I don't know, we'll put those ideas on the back burner for now, I guess. Fishspicable. I like the name. The design I'm a little more meh on, though, in a more positive way, though, because when I played the game, I actually used its evolution on my final team. I'll give it a low 4. Ragion and Tunatic. Tunatic is too clever of a name for this game, I swear to God. A knife-wielding tuna fish is just inherently funny, and personally, I've always had a bit of a soft spot for the quote-unquote default fish monsters of these types of games. I like it. I feel like I like them way more than the average person, though. Meh, I don't know, man. It's my video. I'll give them both 5s. Draggy is adorable. It's deliberately a very cute design. I think my favorite thing about it is the crystal ball on its head. It's kind of clever because it makes his silhouette a bit more unique, and it also prevents him from being just a generic chibi animal design. This one's an easy 5 for me. It's just a really cute monster that's hard to hate. Although, I will say, the second game does introduce a variant of this guy called Robo-Draggy, which I do like more. In fact, he's probably my favorite slippery yokai in the entire series. Dragonlord and Azure Dragon. Alright, I see what they're doing here. You got a cute baby dragon, and it eventually grows up into a big boy powerful dragon. And again, I like the design. It's very obviously inspired by Chinese dragons, which aren't really yokai, but kind of like a few other things in this list, who really cares at the end of the day? They're still really good designs. I'll give them both 5s as well, though I kind of like the original a little more. Daze and Confuse. They're pretty visually boring. I do like what they're based on, however, basically being cool-looking ghosts that are sort of the embodiment of innocence and naivete. Aside from that, though, they're not really interesting. I'll give them 2s. Chummer and Shrook. These 2 are fun. They're basically just big, chunky sharks. Their names have some really funny wordplay behind them, too. I'll give them 3s. Spenp? I don't know how you say that, and, Almi. They're sentient coin purses, I guess. I feel like I like these 2 a little more than the average person, though neither of them are really special at all. I'll give them 3s as well. Babylon and Banana Nose. These 2 are really funny. They're commonly NPCs that give you advice on upcoming areas when you find them, and the gimmick here is that Babylon goes on explaining things a little too much to a point in which you're button mashing a bit by the end, and Banana Nose explains just too little that you're left going, wait, that was it? And they pull it off pretty well without it being too annoying. I don't know. As for the designs, I do enjoy them quite a bit too. I know they're based off bananas, but something about them kind of looks bird-like to me as well. And well, I've liked most birds in this game up to this point anyway. I'm gonna give them both 4s. They're both very funny, both conceptually and how they pull them off. Copperlead, Cynache, and Slivereth. I love all 3 of these. In fact, they may be among my favorite slippery designs in the entire series. Like, I kid you not, if it weren't for Robodragi, one of these might very well be my favorite yokai of that particular tribe. The colors on all 3 are super cool. I like the, scepter rattle thing they hold on the ends of their tails. They're just confident-looking snakes with royalty motifs, and I really like them. On a side note, am I the only one who's kind of reminded of Mausinger from Ni no Kuni whenever I look at these things? I know that's a really random comparison, but I cannot unsee him whenever I look at these guys. Maybe it's the head shape, the similar-ish expression, the whiskers and facial hair looking a bit similar. He too is royalty, so maybe that has something to do with it. I don't know, someone tell me I'm not crazy here, please. Regardless, I'll give them all 5s. I'm not even sure which one I like the most here. Vinoct and Shadow Vinoct. Something dark Gary and light Gary, I guess. I don't know, man. I think these 2 are fan favorites in the series, but I never really quite saw the appeal of them. They just kind of look like a guy, but with ghost snakes around him, which is a cool look, but again, it just doesn't really do it for me. I do like what he's based on, though, and I'll give him a 3. Komashura. Okay, despite saying that I would cover recolors and variants together, I actually forgot about this one, and I don't feel like going all the way back to edit that part of the video, so we'll cover him here instead. This is Komasan, but sterner looking and with red and gold highlights all over him, which does sound cool, but I can't really say I'm a fan. I guess I just don't think these additions complement Komasan's base design that well. I'll give him a 3. Dan Doodle. Another variant I forgot to talk about, and I don't know how I forgot about this one, because the fact that they give Manjimut multiple variants, some of which get pretty wild all things considered, is something you'd think would be pretty unforgettable. Regardless, I have pretty identical feelings here. If anything, he kind of adds more fuel to my theory that Manjimut is taking the piss out of the concept of a fantasy animal with a human face, because what they did here was they take the base design and went, okay, you think Manjimut is ugly? Well, what if we did this? And they gave him a handsome face instead, and somehow it's still as uncomfortable. It's a very thanks I hate it kind of design, if that makes sense. And for similar reasons, I'm giving him a 4 as well. Seriously, I will not back down on this. I genuinely believe Manjimut is more creative than people give him credit for. And the final recruitable yokai is Gilgaros. I never even got a chance to get this thing because the requirements are frankly insane sounding, and I didn't even play much of the post-game of the first game anyway, but from my understanding, it's kind of deliberately designed to be overpowered, which I'm not really the biggest fan of. I don't know, the idea of having an objective best monster in a creature capture game always rubs me the wrong way, because the core thing I love about them is you get to make your own personal teams that have their own unique strengths and weaknesses. And aside from that, I'm not the biggest fan of this thing either. It's fine, I guess, but at the end of the day, it's just a big demon with a stick that also happens to be associated with my actual least favorite mechanic in the entire series, Terror Time. I really hate Terror Time. Every time this minigame is sprung on you, I always go, okay, this is the time it's all going to snap and I'm going to finally enjoy this, and I never do. It's very frustrating and kind of the thing where the game would actively be improved if it was just an abandoned mechanic entirely. I'll give Gilgaros a 2. And, well, that's all the recruitable monsters, but you know what? Because I hate ending these videos on sour notes, let's take a look at the boss monsters and grade those as well. While they're not recruitable, they technically are part of the medallium after all, and it's been so long since I've done a full playthrough of the first game that taking a little overview of them could be a ton of fun. So first we have Slimamander and Hydra. I mean, the second game basically says exactly what it is. It's a Hydra with eyes in its mouths. Although, they are actually based off of yokai, specifically these fat, hairy snakes that just kind of eat stuff. Oh, Jesus Christ, Shin Megami Tensei once again has a monster based off the same thing too. Look how goofy it looks. As for this thing, it's a fun intro boss to the series. I'll give it a 4. Sproink and Hoggles. I'm not as much of a fan. Really, the only thing I remember about this boss is that it has dancing old men in the background for some reason. God, this series, I'll give them 2s. I don't really like them. SV Snaggerjag in Styx Mark 6. I hate its name. It feels like the localizers had a banger idea of what to call this thing, but really struggled to fit it into the character limit or something. A lot of monsters actually have this problem in the 3rd game, now that I think about it. I do not remember this boss at all, though, although I do think he looks pretty cool. I'll give him a 3. Massive Face and Calypso. If you're wondering why his official art looks like this, the context of this boss is that it is a giant, and I don't even think you get to see below his waist, so I guess this is the best they could do for, like, an official art. It's a big man, basically. What it's based on is really hilarious, though. If you Google image search this thing, it's often depicted as a giant cyclops, but its actual origin story is a normal-looking dude whose neck grows abnormally long when you try to look up at him, and then he lunges at you and eats you when you look so high that you fall over. And as for this thing, it's fine, I guess. Again, it's just a big guy. I'll give it a low 3. Phantasmarai and Spooklunk. By the way, if you're wondering why there's been 2 of each of these bosses despite not being recruitable, and why of them is always an edgier recolor, what's going on here is the first one you fight in the main story, and the recolor is a much more powerful version you can fight in the post-game. Now as for these 2, I like them a lot. They kind of look like Benkei, but evil and not as interesting, but I don't know, you guys know I like Benkei a lot. He was the first 5 I gave in this video, so I'll give these ones 4s. Tarantutor. It's a big spider. I don't know. It has a pretty cool origin, being based off of a yokai that has the front half of a bull and the back half of a spider. Although one of the later games does a retread of this idea, and personally, I like that one a lot more. Kind of just leaving Tarantutor in an awkward situation as a result. Whatever, I'll give it a 3. Dr. Mannyman and Dr. No Gut. These 2 are really creative. One thing the official arts don't show you is that he uses that IV bag pull thing, I don't know if those have a name, as a walking stick, which is really clever. He gets a lot of screen time in the 3rd game, and even a tragic backstory for some reason. I don't know, man, I like this guy. It's a funny design, a very fun character, too. I'll give them both 5s. McCracken. I think this was the villain of the game, and I don't remember anything about him. I'm sorry. Historically, I don't find the villains too interesting in these games, to be perfectly honest, but I like his design a lot, at the very least. The wiki says he's apparently based off of either bishop fish or sea monks, which are European folklore. Wait, why is this the villain of the game where all the main characters are based off of yokai? I mean, that hasn't bothered me before, but for, like, the main villain, that feels a little weird, right? I don't know, that feels a little random. There's gotta be something I'm missing here. Maybe he is based off of yokai and the wiki just doesn't mention it. Regardless, I do like McCracken's design, at least. I'll give him a 4. McCracken also has an unnamed second form and a recolor of that called Squickster, which is kind of ugly, to be honest. I don't hate it, though, because it really does pull off that JRPG final boss monster motif pretty well in a pretty kid-friendly way. I'll give them both 3s. Do Wheel. The reason its official art looks like this is it's actually the same monster, but its face flips over to reveal each of these 2 faces. It's an interesting design. Making a face that looks like 2 separate people, both upside down and right side up, is actually a lot harder than you'd imagine, and this pulls that off rather well. It's based off of something really creepy as well, and I like it a lot. I'll give it a 4. Sharpster. It's a bird with hampers that have mouths. I don't know, I think it's kind of fun. I actually do like this design quite a bit. It's also not based off a yokai, but instead of fairy tale, which... Okay, this is actually something I especially like about this thing too. Explaining its origin story is actually a spoiler for how to beat it. It's really clever how it's implemented into the game. I'll give it a high 4. Wobble Walk. Wobble Walk looks cool. It also looks pretty different from most monsters in this game, to a point which it almost feels like it's from a different JRPG entirely. I think that ironically makes it stand out in a very charming way. I'll give it a 4. And then finally we have... Oh, Jesus Christ. I originally did the bosses because I didn't want to end the video talking about Terror Time, but the final entries in the medallium just happen to be the 3 bosses of Terror Time. God, I'll give them all 2s. I have identical feelings towards them than I do to Gilgaros. I don't like Terror Time. But I did like making this video, and yeah, that's all of the monsters from the medallium of the original Yokai Watch. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. It's certainly different, but I just felt like trying something a little out there this time around. Let me know what you think in the comments. Are there any that I especially hated that you loved, or vice versa? Let me know if you'd ever like me to try videos of the series, but for the sequels, or maybe other creature capture games entirely. Well, as per usual, feel free to like, comment, and share the video if you enjoyed it. It really does help out the channel. Thank you to my Patreon supporters, Gallo, Great Rolf, and Horror Gemstone. The support is greatly appreciated, and I will see you folks later. Thanks for watching.